In 2015, I bought this, my first gaming laptop, an Alienware X17 R1. I didn't buy it to carry around with me daily. Instead, I bought it as a desktop replacement. Since then, desktop replacements have come a long way. They are far more powerful and thinner and quieter than before, but they still suffer from some of the same downfalls. This is the new X17, a brand new product from Alienware with a redesigned chassis and thermal system, and the first Alienware I've used since then. As of right now, Alienware only offers this laptop in white. Not an issue for my preferences, as I really like the overall design and color. I'm not a fan of the big 17 on the lid, but luckily, it is subtle enough to not turn me completely away. The interior is a blackish gray color with a soft textured feel. I like the texture of this material, but it is a bit of a fingerprint magnet. However, it can be easily cleaned with some alcohol wipes. There's a hexagon design pattern for the ventilation above the keyboard and on the bottom, and a very bright Tron trim light on the back circling the ports. Now, I'm not usually a big fan of loud RGB on my laptops, but I do like the way this one looks. Here, you'll find two USB-C 3.2 Gen 2 ports, one Thunderbolt 4 enabled and both with power delivery, two USB 3.2 Type A ports with power share, Ethernet, HDMI 2.1, a micro SD card slot, and a mini DisplayPort. On the left is the power connector, and on the right is a headset jack. It's a great set of ports, but I would prefer to see the power connector on the back and a few USB ports on the side. Maybe that could make some room for a more useful full SD card slot instead of the micro. The whole device is pretty thin for a 17-inch desktop replacement laptop, at just over 0.8 inches, but it's still quite heavy at just over 6.6 pounds. With that weight comes a very solid build quality. There's a bit of flex in the center of the keyboard deck, some screen wobble, and a stiff hinge, but still, the rest of the magnesium chassis is built like a tank. And it does have quite a large footprint, slightly larger than some other 17-inch laptops, like the MSI GE76 Raider. So when you do decide to take it with you, it's not going to fit in a standard size backpack. I'm only able to fit it in my larger Alienware backpack specifically made for these larger laptops. Now, this isn't the type of laptop you'll want to carry with you daily anyway. Again, this is much better suited as a desktop replacement. I have a lot of thoughts on this keyboard. To start, I have the standard scissor switch keys, but you can upgrade to a Cherry MX mechanical keyboard. Still, the typing experience on the standard keys are great. However, it's not really my favorite for gaming. The keys are a bit shallow for my taste. I actually prefer the more raised keys, something like what you find on the GE76 Raider, over these. Many 17-inch laptops include a number pad. This one does not, so if that is important to you, it's not here. I think the keyboard deck looks cleaner without it, so not a big deal for me personally. The keys have per key RGB lighting, which looks great. However, the secondary functions are not backlit, which is very annoying. Razer used to have the same issue a few years ago on the Blade, and there must have been enough complaints because they finally fixed it. Alienware did add a dedicated volume and microphone control on the right, which are arguably the most used secondary functions, but you'll still have to tilt the screen to see the other secondary functions in the dark. Alienware also inherited the other big complaint from the previous Blade keyboards, with this shortened shift key. I am constantly hitting the up arrow instead of shift when typing. I hope they resolve these issues in the next revision. Moving down from there is a decent trackpad. It's precise and smooth enough, although I wish it was a bit larger. If you get a higher spec configuration, the trackpad will have an RGB backlight. It's not on my model, and it's not something I particularly care about. Alienware has had this feature for years. It's even on my AW17 R1 from 2015, and I quickly turned it off. I always found it a bit distracting the way it constantly lights up and shuts off after every cursor movement. For the display, you can choose between a 165 or 360Hz 1080p screen or a 120Hz 4K screen. I went with the 1080p 360Hz option. It's the only one that includes G-Sync and Advanced Optimus, which offers more performance and reduced latency in game, but keeps the battery saving benefits of Optimus when not gaming. However, I've only tested 2 gaming laptops this year with Advanced Optimus, and both have had significant stuttering in game, to the point where it felt frustrating to play really anything. Thankfully, Dell issued a BIOS update at the end of September to enable a MUX switch. Since disabling the setting, I have noticed nothing but smooth gameplay. Now, while I do at least wish 1440p was an option on the X17, I will say I still feel that a 1080p resolution is still a high enough resolution for gaming, even on a 17-inch screen. Paired with a 360Hz refresh rate and 3 millisecond response time, games look and feel very fast and responsive. Ideal for anything competitive. Most games aren't going to hit that 360Hz cap, so there's no wasted frames here. The screen gets decently bright at 310 nits and has good color accuracy, hitting 95% of the sRGB, which looks great for games and other general computer stuff. For those who need a wider color gamut for color accurate work, the 1080p panel is only hitting 76% of the Adobe RGB and 77% of the P3 color gamuts. So you may want to look into the 4K display, which promises 100% of the Adobe RGB. Above the display is a 720p webcam with Windows Hello. Not the greatest webcam quality, but the convenient sign-in feature is really nice to have. The speakers are not the greatest either. Actually, they're pretty bad. They have a very tinny, harsh sound to them, so you'll want to wear a pair of headphones. I have the Best Buy configuration here with the i7-11800H, RTX 3070, 16 gigs of RAM, and a 1TB SSD, which is getting impressive scores in CPU benchmarks and fantastic gaming performance on the internal 1080p display, as well as external 1440p, 4K, and ultra-wide displays. The real reason I've been using this for the majority of my gaming personally is the new thermal system. First of all, it's much quieter than other laptops I've tested. I use this in the living room while the family is watching TV, and it doesn't get distractingly loud. And it effectively keeps the temps down on this 140 watt GPU. When running a few of the benchmarks, such as Cinebench R23, I did notice some thermal throttling while using the balanced mode. However, I have not had any thermal issues when gaming. Alienware is using 4 individually controlled fans to regulate the system temps, along with a gallium-based thermal material. And it's quite effective, keeping the 11800H at 85 degrees Celsius and the 3070 around 76 degrees Celsius during gameplay, all while keeping the fans relatively quiet, never exceeding 60 decibels in balance mode, and 65 decibels in the performance mode. Although I have noticed a slight whining noise coming from the right fan when under load. Still, it's not nearly as loud or annoying as other thin and light laptops. You can update these fan profiles in the Alienware Command Center software, which is slow and does not have the best user experience. But hopefully this is something their UX team will update in the future. Battery life is one area where this laptop really struggles. One of the selling points for me was the Advanced Optimus feature, which is supposed to allow that longer battery life by automatically switching between the integrated GPU and dedicated GPU with G-Sync support. Even with it on, I'm still only really getting around 3 hours of battery life, and considering all the issues I mentioned earlier with Advanced Optimus, I don't exactly find that worth keeping on. This is a large and heavy machine and not something you'll want to carry with you daily, but still, I wish there was more battery life by using an AMD Ryzen CPU, or maybe fitting a larger 100 watt-hour battery instead of the 87 watt-hour battery. This is still the same battery life seen in my Alienware from 2015. Now, the 240 watt power adapter has seen some advancement. It is significantly smaller and more compact than what I've seen from the competitors and previous 240 watt power adapters. However, some of the higher spec configurations will have a much larger 330 watt brick. Now, despite some minor critiques and complaints, I really like this laptop. I plan to take advantage of the upgradable RAM by upgrading it to 32 gigs and add an additional SSD as there are 2 slots available, then continue to use this for my personal gaming for the foreseeable future. I like the overall look. It stays cool, quiet, has great performance, a great display, and yeah. So thanks for watching. Hope to catch you in the next one.